Hello, and welcome to week 2 of this 6-week introductory mindfulness course. Today's session will focus on mindfulness of the body and build on our discussion of mindfulness of the breath from last week. So we'll start ourselves by grounding in a short meditation to review last week's concepts and also just to settle in. So this will be a 5-minute sit focused on mindfulness of the breath with just a few key reminders from last week. So first, remember the idea I shared from one of my teachers that says, sit upright but not uptight. Just a nice mix of having a good posture but not being too tense and stressed. And a posture that allows the breath to flow naturally. So you can close your eyes or just gaze slightly forward with your eyes open. And just soften any tension you may be feeling. You can start to note your breath, just in or out, or you can count your breaths to 10, starting with 1 on the inhale and 2 on the exhale. So remember, if you're using one of these techniques, just to make the mental note a soft whisper that should be 10% noting and 90% mindfulness of the breath. And as you settle in, pay attention to the breath wherever you feel it most clearly. This might be in your nostrils or in your throat, maybe in your chest or in your belly. And just remember, whenever your attention drifts, just note thinking, let it go, and return back to your breath and awareness of your breath. Just this breath and this breath. Remembering, if your mind drifts, just to note thinking and return to your focus on this breath. So on the next breath, just starting to gently shift your awareness back to the world around you. And feeling the ground beneath your feet. Starting to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Stretch your shoulders a little bit if needed. Your neck. Just open your eyes as you're ready. Coming back to awareness of the world around you. So in this session, we will have a talk on the mindfulness of the body with some exercises to connect to this practice. And then we'll do a mindfulness of body meditation that builds off last week's and this practice we just did, focusing on mindfulness of the breath. And then I'll give some closing tips just for continuing to develop your practice. So since we're focusing on body today and mindfulness of the body, just take a moment to know what you're feeling in your body. And just what do you notice right now? I would also set an intention to be aware of your body throughout this talk. And just not just on your thoughts of what's going on, but think about how these thoughts are also provoking different physical sensations. It's good to set this intention, otherwise we tend to just live in our thoughts and emotions without really being aware of our physical senses. So around 5 years ago, I was going through a very difficult period in my life. I'm just trying to figure out what direction to go with my life. And I found it very difficult to avoid just being lost in my swirling thoughts and emotions. Mindfulness practice just seemed to be of no use at the time. Sitting and trying to focus on breath, my thoughts would just go crazy and I couldn't settle in. I tried everything I could think of, all the techniques and different strategies different teachers had shared with me. And then one morning I was just lying in bed after very little sleep, and I just started sensing my feet. I figured these were the thing that were farthest away from my head, so I was trying to get away from my head and my thoughts. And so on the in-breath, I would just flex my foot and feel those sensations. And then on the out-breath, I would just let it relax and see what that felt like. So I did that just over and over, just flexing on the in-breath, relaxing on the out-breath. And over time, my thoughts gradually began to settle, at least enough to where I was able to start sitting in meditation again. And I really believe this practice of just being able to come back and not escape my thoughts, but have them settle down and enough to where I could see them and be with them really helped me to work through this challenging time. So in the world around us, we sometimes hear mystical stories about out-of-body experiences. And this is not to discount anyone's spiritual beliefs or interest in these stories, but I think it's also important to talk about how amazing it can be to have in-body experiences and how these can support your mindfulness practice. Mindfulness teacher Thich Nhat Hanh said, people usually consider walking on water or in thin air a miracle. But I think the real miracle is not to walk either on water or in thin air, but to walk on the earth. Every day we are engaged in a miracle which we don't even recognize. A blue sky, white clouds, green leaves, the curious eyes of a child, and our own two eyes. All of these are a miracle. So in this talk, we will think about how to cultivate this type of connection and how to become more aware of how our physical world can support this. So I'll give some initial thoughts on working with challenging internal feelings, such as strong emotions and or physical pain. We'll also talk about the personal disconnection from the body and how this relates to the world around us. We'll cover some simple practices for getting into the body and helping to develop more awareness around this. And then we'll sit together for a longer period of time and expand on mindfulness of breathing practice to include mindfulness of the body in more depth. So I've heard different teachers say that our issues are in our tissues, meaning everything that comes up for us, thoughts, feelings, and beyond, has a physical connection and response that lives in our body. You can invoke this just by sitting here and thinking of something that puts butterflies in your stomach, like being on a roller coaster, or maybe looking down over a steep cliff, especially if you have a fear of heights. So practicing embodiment can bring up pain and challenging emotions, sometimes without us even knowing why. So it's good to choose an anchor that you can shift back to if something gets too intense emotionally or physically. This can be going back to the breath that we worked with last week, or it can be encouraging self-talk or peaceful imagery, something that feels nurturing to you. I mentioned the feet example, so you could also try that, or your hands. Really just experiment and find out what works for you. Also, when working with and practicing awareness of the body, we can also experience more intense physical pain since we are becoming even more aware of these sensations. So if we look at this, we can also notice how something like pain is not actually solid, or as solid as we sometimes think. But if we put more awareness on it, which seems paradoxical, we can actually see that it's not this solid. And this can sometimes help to reduce or even ease pain and tension. For more intense pain that does stick around, it's good to have an anchor to shift your attention to if it does get to be too much. Just like we talked about with strong emotions. In these practices, you're learning how to help self-regulate personal challenges and address these as you're able to by trying to reduce moments of overwhelm. It's also important to remember that these practices should be done slowly and gently, with interest and a sense of care for yourself. So give yourself a moment to sense what a good anchor might be for yourself. You can close your eyes if it helps. So when it comes to working with these challenges, whether emotional or physical pain, It's best to start small and not go to what is most difficult right away. And as things start to feel too much, just move back to your anchor as needed. And then move back to working with the challenge or pain as you're ready. You can open your eyes if they've been closed. So in working with the challenge of staying mindful in our lives, it's important to remember the world around us often stacks the deck against us. Many of us move through the world as if our bodies were merely the instrument used to carry around our big brains. James Joyce talks about something like this in his story, The Dubliners, when he says, Mr. Duffy lived at a little distance from his body, regarding his own acts with doubtful side glances. He had an odd autobiographical habit which led him to compose in his mind from time to time a short sentence about himself containing a subject in the third person and a verb in the past tense. So we can literally become so disembodied in our lives that we describe ourselves in the third person and even live our lives in a mental control tower that is trained and perpetuated by this culture. So our brains are a lot, or can be a lot, which can be also exhausting. There's a line in the film called This Is Where I Leave You, in which the younger brother is telling his older sister, who basically raised him, that he wishes he could just get her voice out of his head. So often we have these competing voices in our head that can drive us crazy, and we just wish they would stop. So when we want to stop thinking about something or don't want to feel something, we can numb ourselves with the use of social media, which also constantly encourages people to not appreciate their bodies. We can use substances, mindless eating, overworking, etc. You can really pick your poison. But these activities often cut us off from our hearts, and thus our emotions and feelings are blocked. So where do they go? They get trapped in our body while we're living in this virtual reality. Because really, what are we trying to numb if not the body and the way it is feeling? Another element of this disembodiment is prejudice against bodies based on artificial perceptions like race, size, or other factors that lead to many damaging perceptions of ourselves and others. If we cannot come to be aware and respect our own bodies, it's hard to respect those of other people, which also applies on a bigger scale to the world around us. So let's just check in for a moment. You can close your eyes again if you choose. Think about where this lands for you. Think about maybe something you've done to numb yourself, whether it be scrolling social media, or you can think of a time when you were treated poorly because of your body. And just notice how this feels. Maybe there's tension or a hardness or resistance. But what does it feel like for you? When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So in thinking about these challenges, how can being here in the body and having an in-body experience help to support our well-being? One reason that being embodied is challenging is that bodily experience is out of control, and our habit is to try to control our world. But practicing with the body can help us become more comfortable in just noticing what is here in the moment. So how do we do this? How do we cultivate this practice of staying with what we would normally avoid? How do we start to feel from the inside out? There are many more traditional embodiment practices like body scans and walking meditations that I would be glad to share more about if you're interested. But we're going to talk about some simple daily practices that can help you come back to the body and then do a sitting meditation that incorporates a deeper awareness of this as well. So the first practice is working with touch points such as the hands or feet, which I mentioned earlier. I find that can be really helpful to get down to the micro level and just focus on something like your feet or your fingers. So we'll do one more short exercise. You can close your eyes if you want. And just pick one of your pinkies and place all your attention on that pinky. And what do you notice? Do you notice cool or hot? And are there fluctuations in this temperature? Is there tingling, stiffness? Can you feel the blood flowing in your pinky? Now shift to another finger of your choice and just notice what's there. What sensations do you notice with this finger? And then also notice as your mind is focusing on the body like this that it's hard to be thinking about anything else. So the second practice is savoring practice. So sometimes I'll introduce my high school students to mindfulness by having them savor all the senses while eating a piece of chocolate. So I'll give them a Hershey's Kiss and have them smell it through the wrapper and feel the wrapper and then listen to the wrapper as they take it off and then smell it again to compare and notice the subtle differences. And of course, by this time, your mouth is totally watering. And then I'll just have them take one bite and see what that's like. And then move to slowly chewing and just really savor the whole experience. So even with pleasurable experiences like this, we often rush through these. But really slowing down and noticing the pleasant sensations in the body can help us learn to better engage in the present moment. This can be done with great food, soft blankets, music, just whatever really engages your senses in a pleasurable way. The third practice is just becoming more aware of your body during tasks when your mind usually drifts, such as those we talked about last week, whether it be doing the dishes, cooking, brushing your teeth. Just using these moments to help you be in your body and just shifting that which may usually be mindless to a mindful activity and making life a meditation. So we'll now do about a 15-minute meditation practice that integrates the breath and the body practices. So even though we focused on breath last week, you were asked to focus on where you could sense this breath in your body. So we'll expand on that idea this week. So find a sitting position again that allows you to be alert, upright but not uptight. I like to think of this like a guitar string. Just as you're tuning it, you're trying to find that perfect balance between it being slightly relaxed but also tight enough. You can close your eyes if you haven't already, or cast a downward gaze in front of you. And just establish a simple sense of presence. So now just allow your awareness to scan through your body, and wherever possible, just soften and release obvious areas of tension. It can help to start at the top of your head and just with each breath, just feel the tension dissolving down towards the ground. So move down through your face, and your temples, mouth, and your jaw. Down through your neck and shoulders. Just letting the tension dissolve all through your body as you follow your breath. You might take some very deep and full breaths. And then just allow your breath to resume a natural pace. Again, bringing your attention to where you most easily detect the breath. And just letting this place of experiencing be your home base and your anchor to the present moment. Remember, you can use sound or touch as another anchor if you're having difficulty with the breath. And now, just with a relaxed, interested attention, discovering what the sensations of breath or your chosen anchor feel like moment to moment. Really honing in on the physical sensations. Remembering if your mind wanders off that this is a moment of mindfulness. And gently bringing your breath back to the inflow and the outflow of your chosen anchor. And back to the sensations of your breathing. So now scan your body and just notice if any particular sensations are strong and calling your attention. It might be a tight place, it might be a pleasurable sensation, it might be an itch. But just bring an interested and kind presence to the sensation. And just notice what the sensation feels like. You might be aware of temperature, tingling, aching, twisting, vibrating. Just feel the sensations as they are with a soft, open awareness. You can stay with one sensation or one area, or if you feel a stronger physical sensation arise, you can shift your attention and just notice that one. Or continue to notice how the other is changing and feeling. You can notice if the sensation is pleasant or unpleasant. And as you fully attend to them, do they become more intense or do they tend to dissipate? So just notice how they change. If a sensation completely dissipates or you lose focus, just return to your anchor and focus on your breath. And then just notice whether there's sensation or sensations are arising. If you find it difficult to stay with strong sensations, you might breathe with them, just letting the breath help you find some balance and openness in their midst. It can also be helpful to name the sensations, seeing if there's a word that describes your experience, such as tightness or heat or pressure, or just sensation if no other word comes to mind. Just repeating this in a soft tone, letting the naming be a whisper in the background. And we'll just practice in this way for a few minutes. Now just returning to your home base, the breath or anchor of particular sensations. During this last minute or so, strong sensations call your attention. Just let your primary anchor recede and bring full attention to what's arising. Naming what you notice and offering presence. If nothing strong is calling your attention, just stay with the home base of your breath or other anchor. Just relaxed and alert. And as you transition back to this space, just notice the sensation of opening your eyes or looking ahead. Just maybe stretch a bit and just come back to awareness of this world around you. So thank you for practicing. I'm going to close with a poem that I think connects well to this idea of bodily connection. It's called Trusting Prana by Dana Falds. Trust the energy that courses through you. Trust. Then take surrender even deeper. Be the energy. Don't push anything away. Follow each sensation back to its source in vastness and pure presence. Emerge so new, so fresh that you don't know who you are. Welcome in this season of monsoons. Be the bridge across the flooded river and the surging torrent underneath. Be unafraid of consummate wonder. Be the energy in the blaze, a trail across the clear night sky like lightning. Dare to be your own illumination. So when you find yourself having an out-of-body experience, just remember to follow each sensation back to its source in vastness and pure presence. And remember to seek the deep well of wisdom that being in the body has to share with us. So I think it's important to do regular body check-ins and just be patient with what the body has to tell us. It speaks a language of intuition and requires a different type of listening. It's also important to do this with the spirit of loving awareness so we can transcend stories that we tell ourselves about our body. So in this coming week, I would just continue with your mindfulness of breath meditation, 5 to 10 minutes a day or most days. You can also integrate body awareness as you feel comfortable. Just notice the physical sensations that are arising and pay close attention to those. You can also explore other practices like yoga and Tai Chi that tend to integrate mindfulness and movement. And lastly, I mentioned activities like becoming mindful while doing dishes, gardening, and other ideas. So this week, just try adding awareness to at least one of these activities and just really be aware of your physical sensations. For instance, while doing the dishes, just notice the warm water and the soap bubbles and the changing temperature on your hands. And just try to be as embodied as possible with one of these tasks. So as we close here, I just want to thank you for listening and thank you for your practice. And I will see you next time.